The first thing I like to tell people whenever we talk about this topic is having a criminal record is a lot more common than people realize. 1 in 3 Americans have some type of misdemeanor or felony record that is not traffic. And so this just affects a third of America. And that's the main reason why it's important.
It's an unbelievable number for people to wrap their head around. 1 in 3 adults in the United States. It's hard to think of that many other things that have that much magnitude across the country.
And for a lot of people with records, it turns into being denied opportunity after opportunity. And as you can imagine, becomes very, very frustrating and can lead to things like relapse, return to the criminal justice system, because we as a society have not given that person any lawful ways to do anything else.
I'm Stuart Yasgur, and this is Economic Architecture, the podcast. Today's conversation is with Noella Sudbury. She's a structural innovator and the founder and CEO of Rasa Public Benefit Corporation in Salt Lake City, Utah. Criminal records have the capacity to affect one's life in more ways than one. It can be hard to understand how pervasive the impact of a criminal record can be. It can create an impediment in securing jobs and housing and other basic building blocks in our lives. It can prevent a parent from simple things like passing a background check to go on a field trip at your kid's school. But structural innovators like Noella see a different possibility. She uses technology to give criminal record holders a chance to potentially remove their criminal record from public view and, depending on their state's laws, to check the box no when applying for jobs that ask about their criminal history.
For a lot of people with records, they've got to live, they've got to feed their families, they need a place to live. And if you can't get a job, you have to get money from somewhere. And so, unfortunately, it leads to recidivism. It leads to greater criminal justice costs. And for many people, a cycle that never stops. They can never escape poverty.
Noella Sudbury created an app through her organization, Rasa Legal, to help criminal record holders gain access to their own record, see its eligibility to be cleared under the law, and get connected to lawyers to help them through the actual expungement process of clearing their criminal history. This ultimately opens up better options for housing, reduces barriers to employment, and creates the potential for the needs of employers and employees alike to be met through more fair chance hiring practices.
There is a study done showing there's something like, I forget the exact number, but like over 50,000 collateral consequences to having a criminal record. But one of the main reasons how a criminal record impacts someone is in getting jobs, because on the employer side of the equation, we use background checks to hire. It's very, very common. You apply for a job, the employer conducts a background check, your record comes back. And all of a sudden, as the person with a record, you're having to explain things, sometimes things that happened very, very long ago, justifying why you should get this job. And you're in competition, of course, with a lot of other folks who may not have records. I think there's lots of things that can be done about this problem. One is, right, we can educate employers, encourage them to hire people, encourage them to have more risk-based background check practices, things like Sean Bushway talks about, right, to not just say no when we see a record, but figure out what is enough time, what is the relationship of this person's record to the job they've applied for. How can we safely do it? Because employers are truly missing out when they don't. 85% of HR managers say people with records are as qualified as someone without a record for a similar job role, but their retention rates tend to be 12% longer. So they tend to stay, they are very loyal, they're grateful for the second chance as someone who works for an organization that talks to people with records every day, whose main goal is to get employment or to get better employment. They're so grateful when an employer is willing to give them that opportunity that they really want to prove you were right to do this. Like, I'm here for you. I'm invested in this company. I'm going to prove to you that this chance was worth it, that I'm worth it. And it's sad that people feel like they have to prove that. But employers really are missing out by not choosing to do fair chance hiring. That's one thing we can do. Another thing we can do, and this is something that I've devoted my life to doing, is helping people clear their criminal records. 100 million people have records all across the country. There is a pathway in most states to get your record cleared. The problem is that it's costly, it's complicated. Most people find that they need a lawyer to help them clear their criminal record, and most people with records cannot afford what a lawyer will charge. And so what we do at my organization, Rasa Legal, we've built technology to make that process simpler, to create an app where someone with a record can see immediately what's on their record, whether those records are eligible for sealing or expungement under the law. And if so, get connected to a lawyer who can help them through the process. And in doing this work, both on the fair chance hiring side and the record clearance side, I've kind of come to believe that if someone is eligible to clear their criminal record, that is the best way to get them the job that they want.
Yeah, well, it makes tremendous sense, right? So just to be clear for folks who may not be as familiar, what does it mean for a record to be cleared?
So what I'm referring to here is sealing or expungement. There's different terms for what it's called, and every state has their own system and laws, but it's the process of removing from public view what is on your criminal record, allowing a person to check no when they encounter that box on housing or job applications. Have you ever been arrested? Have you ever been convicted of a crime? It's everywhere, right? And so when you get your record sealed or expunged, you have the legal right to check no. And because under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which is a federal law, private background check companies have to remove sealed and expunged records from their databases. It's this magical combination of like, I'm representing I don't have a record. Go ahead, do a background check on me. It comes back clear. No one will ever know. And what that does for the person then is allow them to be competitive, allow them to apply for jobs with confidence, put themselves out there for opportunities, knowing that when a background check comes back clean, they're going to be judged fairly for what they can contribute, for their own skills, their personality, their references, not filtered out of a job because of some old mistake from the past that often doesn't have any relevance to whether or not they're going to be a good employee, whether or not they have the training or experience to do this job. Is just unfortunately a way of filtering out people that employers have used for years who have criminal records.
Yeah, it gives them the opportunity to really compete on their own merits, right?
Yeah.
Which is a widespread value that we have, is that people should be able to compete on their own merits. And who is eligible, right? So if somebody's hearing this for the first time and they're saying, okay, this makes a lot of sense, it removes this huge barrier for employment and for employers to find employees, but what kind of situations are eligible for being cleared?
Yeah, easier easier said than done, right? It's complicated, but in general, we're looking at three factors. So every state, as I mentioned, can come up with their own laws of what types of records can be cleared. But in general, those three requirements are going to be: how many total records do you have? Because some states have numerical limits. And what I mean by that is, in some states, okay, you have too many records, you're not allowed to do anything. That's a law in some states. The second factor is what those records are, because most states have exclusions, right? Sealing or expunging criminal records, getting rid of them is tricky. There's public safety concerns. And so, if we're talking about first degree felonies, violent felonies, registerable sex offenses, in many states, felony DUIs, there's like a category of offenses that unfortunately are just not going to be eligible for sealing or expungement because, right or wrong, a state legislature has determined that there's a public safety reason that we want to keep these records public. The third factor then is how long it's been. Most of these laws have waiting periods. And what I mean by how long it's been is time crime free since your last offense. And so for misdemeanor level crimes, that typically is anywhere between 2 to 5 years that you have to wait without anything new. And for felonies, it is typically 5 to 10 years, depending on the severity of the offense, time crime free without any new offenses. And so, in looking at those factors, any state is going to kind of consider those three things. Expungement laws vary wildly throughout the country. They are changing every single year. There's like probably more than 100 bills run to expand who's eligible, to reduce waiting periods, to streamline processes. And I think we're starting to see all of this positive legislative movement because of the way that this is affecting the economy and because of the way that in almost every chamber that I've ever worked with across the country, the number one problem is workforce development. We need workers. As people are being deported, we need workers. As our economy changes, we were just in need of human beings. And I remember talking to the head of our Salt Lake chamber when I started doing this work, probably 8 years ago. And he said, workforce development, talent is the number one issue. And I said, well, what is the criteria for the type of job that you're looking for? And he said, a living, breathing human being. And I'm like, well, I know so many people who are living and breathing who happen to have criminal records. Would you hire someone like that? But I think that shows how desperate employers are to just have humans to fill these jobs and how much friction there is in actually making that happen, because the problem is not that people don't want to work or that they don't want these jobs. I talk to people who've been denied 25 jobs. They want to work more than anything. It's just that someone won't give them a chance.
Right. That in a lot of these circumstances, not that there aren't jobs to be had or that there aren't people to do the jobs. It's that this is creating a barrier for people to get those jobs. And in a lot of cases, there's no merit to it. That's not warranted, right? Like this may be about activities that happened or didn't happen years and years ago that it may be entirely unrelated to the work that they might be doing.
Totally.
So Rasa Legal, you're now helping people clear their records. You're helping to take the complexity out of this, because you can imagine looking for a job in itself is a full-time job. And so then trying to put on top of that the idea, okay, now I need to navigate this complex bureaucratic system, figure out whether I qualify. If I do qualify, how do I get this? And now how do I pay for a lawyer to do it? And so you're coming in and helping make all of that easier. Can you walk us through how that works?
Yeah. So the first question you have, if you have a criminal record, is can I even do something about this? Really hard to know. And I came to this work organizing large scale volunteer expungement clinics where people with records could come and have a conversation with a lawyer about whether they were eligible. And because we didn't have any technology in this space, if you sat down with me, I would say, how many misdemeanors do you have? How many felonies do you have? You know, what are the dates that you completed probation? And people would look at me like, that's not meaningful to me. I don't remember what's on my record. What I remember is it was more than 10 years ago. What I remember is that it was the darkest period in my life. I might have some theft. I might have some drug related things. I struggled with addiction, but I actually can't tell you. I can't tell you. I don't know how to get my records. There's a cost to that. And even if I get my records, I then have this like super complicated law and I have a high school education, lots of barriers, right? And just seeing that and hearing that story over and over again, and then reflecting on my own experience as a lawyer. I am a lawyer, and it was hard for me to piece this together. It was taking us 45 minutes to an hour per person just to determine if someone was eligible, let alone do the paperwork and the legal process. And in some ways, just that question of eligibility, because of data spread all over the place and piecing together what was on someone's record was often the most difficult part. And so, out of that experience, I just became obsessed with this idea of like, we should build an app to help people expunge their criminal records. And that's really what Rasa has done and is live now in Utah, Arizona, and as of last week, Pennsylvania. And so how it works is instead of asking you about your criminal record, it is powered by the records themselves. So you come, you type in your name and date of birth, and I would say, Stuart, we found 3 records matching the name and date of birth you provided. Here's what they are. And for each record, this one's eligible now. This one's eligible in 2 years from now. This one's not eligible. Just in seconds now, you can get the information you're looking for, right? You now have the knowledge. Wow, I can do something about my criminal record. And from there, you can access someone from Rasa's intake and onboarding team to talk about Rasa, about getting an affordable lawyer to help you. So once you get to that results page, you see what your options are. If you qualify for legal aid, we're going to say, hey, Community Legal Services of Philadelphia, right? Where you mentioned Sharon Dietrich earlier, amazing person. They have a whole team of people who do this work. Here's their intake line. It's right around the corner. Here are the hours you can walk in. But if your income is just outside their legal requirements, which is 187.5% of the federal poverty line, maybe you're making $15 an hour. You're too rich now to get a free lawyer. You're not going to be able to represent yourself. Pretty complicated. You can't afford the $2,000 to $5,000 a traditional lawyer will cost. And that's where Ross is kind of filling the gap. We will offer to represent you for $250 a case. And for most people, they can afford it. It is a lawyer. It's not a self-navigation tool. We are going to represent you start to finish and use the technology that we've built to reduce our time and pass those cost savings on to you as the person with a record so that you can get your records cleared and get access to more opportunities. And really, all we need from you is like 5 to 10 minutes of your time. And through your experience, you can track the rest through your app.
But this is incredible. And it's also a real action opportunity for people, anybody who might be listening to this. If they have a record, if they know somebody who has a record, if one of their loved ones has a record. So Rasa Legal, so I'm just going to, let me play back to you what I think I heard in terms of action steps, so you can correct me where I've got this wrong. So Rasa Legal, they can go, it's an app, meaning like if I have a phone, I can download it on my phone.
Yep. So it's a web app now, not in the store. We get that question a lot. I think in the next couple of years, we will transition to an actual app, but it's mobile friendly. So yes, if you have the internet, you go to rasa-legal.com and in 2 minutes, you can see your records and what your options are.
Amazing. And of course, because those are public records, so you can access them and you can pull them out.
Right. And
fantastic. And then
technology to compile them, right? So in a lot of states, you can't go to one place to get your entire record. Rasa's done the work to compile all of that data and make records not case-based, but person-based. So you could see all of your stuff.
And then you can either go to one of the lawyers that you refer people to, or you can hire Rasa for unbelievable $250 per case. So it's a fixed amount for a case.
It's a flat rate that does not include government fees. So I always want to throw that out there. And government fees are all over the place. They're a barrier. If it were up to me, the government would not charge anybody to clear your criminal record. You've already satisfied your sentence. Why are we charging people even more money when you're trying to enter the economy? And we've run legislation in some states to eliminate those requirements. We will continue to do that. But yes, the lawyer piece of it is $250, which is about a tenth of the price of what any other lawyer will charge. And you're really getting the most experienced lawyer because this is all we do. It's like going to the surgeon that has done 10,000 surgeries. So far, we've been able to help 24,000 people, and we have an over 90% success rate. And so,
unbelievable. Can you tell us, so 24,000 people in how much time?
We launched the app on September 7th, 2022. It's a really meaningful day to me because I had no idea if anybody would use this thing. And in the first week, we had close to 1,000 people on the platform. So people heard about it, they used it. And so, yeah, it's been a little over 3 years now. If I'm looking at the calendar, 2 states, we've just launched in a third and hope to bring the platform across the whole country.
That's amazing. And so congratulations, first of all. That's an
Sure.
extraordinary number of people to have worked with to help address this problem. So you just entered Pennsylvania, third state. Where does it go from here? Other states?
Yeah, other states. So, one of the trickiest parts of expanding quickly, people are like, why can't you just turn this on in my state tomorrow? Well, when you build a platform that is powered by the records themselves, you first need the records to do that. And so to date, we've really been working with courts and corrections and probation agencies to get that information, unify it, code on top of it. But as you can imagine, that's pretty slow. That's not super scalable. And so I think we figured out how to get more of a national data source to allow us to expand more quickly. So I think Ross's growth in 2026 and beyond is going to look like hiring a bunch more engineers to do the coding work more quickly to help us expand to more states faster so that we can democratize the law and help anybody in America with a criminal record get access to either a free lawyer from Legal Aid or a lawyer from our platform, or if the person chooses, right, another lawyer in the marketplace to help them get rid of their record and hopefully get employment, get housing, volunteer in their kids' school. So many different ways that clearing a record can help a person in life.
And are these lawyers, you mentioned there are lawyers on your platform. Are they lawyers that work for Rasa Legal? What's your relationship with the lawyers?
They are. I really care about quality. I really want people to access good lawyers. And so Rasa employs our own lawyers. So we have licensed lawyers in Arizona, Utah, and Pennsylvania that work for Rasa that are going to be communicating with the person through the platform. As we grow, right, that may change, it may evolve. We also work in partnership with legal aid organizations. And so sometimes somebody will hear about legal aid from the Rasa platform and we'll transfer that person over to that lawyer. So I think it may depend as we grow, how we grow, and who's on the platform. But keeping prices low is a huge priority for me because I know that people with records don't have a lot of money. And so it's been harder to like open it up to more lawyers beyond Rasa because many lawyers don't want to do the work for $250. And by employing them myself, I'm like, well, it just needs to pencil out for me, and with volume, it can.
That raises another question, which is a little bit further afield, but because so you're dealing with clearing records and addressing this key problem. You're also kind of pioneering a new model in lawyering. And
Yeah.
this is one really important aspect, one really important set of issues that people face, but there may be others. Are there other topics that you could imagine starting to focus on?
Yeah, I think so. Really interesting to be in legal tech right now. An interesting statistic: 85% of people in America's court system are self represented. They're going alone without a lawyer. 15% of the country has a lawyer. I'm not talking expungement, I'm talking about all law. Really interesting law review article. And Anna Carpenter, who used to be in Utah, ran our Access to Justice Commission and is now the dean of Oklahoma Law School. She wrote a fascinating law review article called like America's Lawyerless Courts, I think is like the name of it. And it is about this very problem. People in courtrooms every day losing their kids, small business disputes, contracts, being evicted. No one knows the rules. No one has lawyers. It is just chaos. If you sit in a courtroom today, it's just chaos. And it's really, really sad because it's a failure of the legal profession, right? If the profession can only serve 15% of people, there's something wrong. And it used to be the opposite. If you go back historically to the 80s, it used to be that only 15% of people were self represented. And so lawyers have become more and more expensive, more and more for the elite. And unfortunately, that leaves a lot of people behind who have very complex legal needs of all types, right? Divorces, small business disputes, small claims, discrimination claims, wrongful terminations. I mean, there's so many ways a lawyer can help people. And so as we grow, I do think that Rasa will refer to, connect to other attorneys based on what the person is looking for. That's really important to me is how we've grown the platform and what we have whether it be legal services or housing services or treatment services, or a lot of people say, I want to repair my credit, right? We're going to let that person tell us what they want. And if they want to be connected to organizations, it's going to be their choice. But yeah, I think clearing your criminal record is for a lot of people the first step. But then it's like, okay, now I want to start a college savings account, or I want to repair my credit, or I want a better place to live, or I want to go back to school, or I'm looking for a scholarship. And people will say, like, what would you recommend? And so the more we can use technology to say, like, hey, now that you have a clear record, here's some opportunities that are available right around where you live. And some people, whether they work for Rasa or not, or maybe they work in community with Rasa to help you achieve these goals that you have for yourself in your life, for you to capitalize on this magic moment of being free, being able to do anything you want. Like, what is your dream, and how can we connect you to that dream now that your record is gone?
One of the things that's so compelling about that is that, the results that people get from these procedures, from going through things like eviction courts, if they're represented, are so dramatically different. So the prospect that this 85% of people who are not represented could have access to high quality, affordable legal assistance is incredible.
I hope that is the future of law. I think technology is changing that a lot, and that the good lawyers will embrace it and figure out how they can use technology to reduce their time, to process cases faster, to make it less manual. I hope that the ethical lawyers will then say, because of all of these advantages, now I can do something cheaper. I can serve more people. I can lower my rates. I could do things flat rate. I think the profession deeply needs that. I think we have a tremendous access to justice crisis in America, but now is the time when we have these tools, as well as legal regulatory reform, right? The ability of non lawyers to do certain things that we before only allowed lawyers to do. The ability for organizations like RASA to raise capital. That used to be illegal for years. And that's really limited the space. If you want to build modern tech, well, guess what? That costs a lot of money. And if we have a rule where law firms can't give equity to engineers, can't be owned in part by non lawyers, well, then we're not going to have modern tech in the law. And so, in forming Rasa Legal, we immediately took advantage of what Utah and Arizona have done, which is to relax some of these requirements and allow lawyers like me, entrepreneurs, to say, hey, I have a really good idea, but I need a lot of money for it. I want to hire modern engineers, but in order to do that, I need to be able to give them a piece of this company, of what we're building, and share equity, as well as share equity with the justice impacted people that we hire. And that's a new thing in the law, but is now an option for a lot of lawyers that are forward thinking, that really want to invest in technology.
That's a really interesting aspect of this, that this kind of structural change in the constitution of what law organizations can look like enables them to access capital in a different way. And when they can access different kind of capital, they can make different kinds of investments, for example, into technology, engaging people who have different types of skills that complement their legal skills. And frankly, a call to action, that there's an opportunity for lawyers and your peers to step forward and to take this up, so we can address some of these real challenges that are creating obstacles for people to contribute in society. That was a fascinating conversation with Noella Sudbury of Rasa Legal. It's incredibly powerful to hear about her experience cleaning the record for 24,000 people in just a few years. And she's just getting started. She has just recently scaled to 2 more states, and the work will continue to grow from here. As we talk about her work, I'd like to draw attention to 2 aspects that may be less obvious on a first glance. Noella's work creates structural change in the market in 2 very distinct ways. First of all, she is addressing a type of market failure that we don't often understand or appreciate, even if we might be familiar with it from our own personal experience. There are times when we as a society place a heavy burden on the shoulders of people who are not well positioned to carry that load. And if they struggle to carry that load, it's not a failing on that person's part. It's our collective failure. We've decided where to place that burden, and in many cases, we can choose to place that burden somewhere else. Noella is redesigning the market to lift the burden from the shoulders of people with criminal records and is placing that burden on the shoulders of well-resourced, highly trained lawyers who can carry it efficiently and effectively. This changes the strategic landscape for people with criminal records, for prospective employers, and for lawyers. I don't want to belabor the point, but I do think it's important to connect the dots. So let's walk through this example. It's a very good thing that there are states that enable expungement of records. But many of those states place the burden of doing all the work on the person with the criminal record. That person needs to know that it's possible to have a record expunged. They have to find out whether they're eligible. They have to figure out how to hire a lawyer with the expertise in the area, and they have to get enough money to hire that lawyer. Then they have to agree to pay the lawyer whether or not the action is successful, which means they're taking on the risk. And they have to do all of this while facing barriers to finding employment and housing. It's a tremendous burden to put on a person, especially someone without the expertise or experience from having done it before. Rasa Legal dramatically reduces the burden on people with a criminal record. Rasa makes it easy to find out whether or not they're eligible to have their record expunged. All they have to do is fill out a short form on the internet. And if they're eligible, Rasa points them towards resources who can help. This may include their own legal services, which have a clear, transparent, and inexpensive flat fee and come with a 90% success rate. Noella's work also brings about a different type of structural change in the market. She is at the frontier of a radical change in the legal profession. In part, this was enabled by another structural change that affected the legal profession, namely the ability to raise capital. The ability to raise capital enabled Rasa Legal to develop the technology to transform the experience of working with lawyers to expunge a record. Technology enables lawyers to only focus their efforts on aspects of the case that directly benefit from their legal expertise. Everything else that can be handled by technology is. This is a highly efficient use of the lawyer's time and skill. And because they're able to work efficiently, they're also able to work on a far larger number of cases. This helps them develop even greater expertise while also freeing them from the expense and time-consuming model of charging by the hour. Rasa Legal is changing the strategic landscape for lawyers and their clients who need their records expunged. In radically remaking how a profession serves clients at high volume and high quality, Rasa Legal is following in the venerable tradition pioneered by Dr. Govindappa Venkataswamy, better known as Dr. V, the founder of the Aravind Eye Hospital in India, and David Green, the founder of Oralab. Today, the Aravind Eye Hospital conducts between 500,000 and 850,000 surgeries a year. Recognizing this, we can also envision where Rasa Legal can grow from here. As it continues to increase the number of states where there are affordable high-quality services to expunge criminal records, will Rasa Legal grow to take on estate planning, divorce, custody arrangements, business incorporation? Will Rasa Legal inspire the creation of a legal profession that offers people at all price points the kind of high-quality, effective legal representation that they need at crucial moments in their life? We look forward to staying in touch with Noella as this important work continues to move forward. I'm Stuart Yasgur, and this is Economic Architecture, the podcast.